I wasn't supposed to find this. It was supposed to be a structural inspection. One of those low-bid, county-funded surveys they make before demolishing condemned properties. The church had no official name, just a line item in a long-forgotten file, parcel #481, H, Clay County, KS. No record of congregants, no sermons in the archive. Just a blank spot on a municipal map and a terse note. Do not enter during winter months. I entered anyway. It was February, the coldest on record since 1903. The wind hadn't stopped in 3 days, and the land was bone-deep quiet. This part of Kansas doesn't have towns, just grids and silos and the occasional ghost of a barn. But the building stood, somehow untouched, a squat limestone chapel sunk low into the prairie, shoulders hunched against the horizon. Inside, the air was thicker than outside. Not colder, warmer, almost humid, like the breath of something buried. The door groaned open as if from pain. The interior was stripped, no pews, no altar, no cross. Just 4 stone walls and a slanted floor, sagging toward what looked like a collapsed cellar door. The plaster had peeled back from the ceiling like scorched skin. It was the smell that kept me still, not rot, exactly. Something older. Like old rainwater trapped in bone. I should have left. I didn't. The cavity in the west wall wasn't visible at first. I found it while brushing away dust near the baseboards, trying to document the water damage. A hollow echo rang out where solid stone should have been. I pried at the crumbling masonry until a small square of the wall gave way. Inside, a leather-bound journal wrapped in oilskin and bound tight with red twine. The cover was cracked and blackened, but one word remained burned into it. Doctrine. I hesitated. Something about the way it was hidden, not stored, but sealed, intentionally. Like someone wanted it out of reach, not forgotten but prevented. I sat in the silence for a long time before opening it. The first pages were brittle and handwritten in a narrow, anxious script. Mostly weather logs and minor accounts of crop failures. But the further I read, the more fragmented the entries became. Dates were scratched out and re-entered. The names repeated: Reverend Amos Parker, Eli Parker. The Winter Covenant. One line had been etched again and again in the margins of every 5th page. They burned more than wood. I don't know why that line unnerved me so much. Maybe it was the handwriting, shaky, as if written in cold or panic. Maybe it was the repetition, the need to insist. But it was the number that clinched it. On the back cover, faintly scratched into the leather, was a sequence I'd seen just days before, 481H. The same as the parcel. The same code from the county registry that led me here. Someone had written it after the journal was sealed, maybe recently. The pressure marks were shallow, fresher than the others. Someone else had found this before me. And someone else had put it back. I left the church with the journal under my coat, heart pounding like I'd stolen something holy. Or unholy. Either way, I knew I wouldn't sleep. I knew I would have to come back. This wasn't just a derelict church. It was a closed loop someone had tried to sever from history. And now, I was inside it. The trail led me to Brearley's Municipal Library, a crumbling stone building with its heating vents stuffed with newspaper and duct tape. The librarian, a white-haired woman named June, looked confused when I asked about PF 32, or anything involving the Parkers. She told me flatly, "We don't have much from that era. Most things burned in the 52 fire." Then, almost as an afterthought, "Unless you check the microfiche. The Mennonites cataloged a lot of what the county didn't want." That's where I found it. An article from the Kansas Sentinel, dated August 3, 1948. New Frontiers of Charity. Sterling House opens its doors in Brearley Township. A bold new venture in moral rehabilitation and Christian rural work ethic. Sterling House will serve as a sanctuary for unsheltered youth from across Kansas. Founded by Reverend Josiah L. Parker, in association with the Parker Family Trust and the Western Chapter of the Sacred Hearth Collective, the project will house over 40 wards of the state in its first year. Built on the bones of the decommissioned Brearley Union School, Sterling House promises faith, structure, and labor toward redemption. Idle hands do the devil's work, Reverend Parker declared at the ribbon cutting. Officially, it was a reformatory academic hybrid, run by volunteer clergy and state-funded coordinators. No barbed wire. No mention of law enforcement. Just sermons, chores, and education. The records presented it as a success. State audits up to 1951 reported stable enrollment, clean financials, and glowing letters of commendation from the Department of Welfare. But every child listed in those rosters, 47 names in total, had a transfer date with no follow-up. No graduation, no family reclamation, no adoption paperwork. Just a stamped line. Relocated, status closed. One letter from a woman named Harriet B. Schultz, listed as the last known school nurse, was filed as unsent in the archives of the Sacred Hearth Collective. They do not permit us to mark the graves. It is a quiet kind of vanishing here. The bodies are not gone, but their names are. I was told by Father Parker not to speak of the furnace room. But I can still hear them when I walk near the old library walls. I have asked to leave 3 times. Each request has gone unanswered. I fear the doctrine is not redemption, it is replacement. I tracked down one former state employee listed as a consultant on the project, William K. Morris, now in hospice care outside Wichita. When I asked him about Sterling House, he didn't answer at first. Just stared at the window. Then he said, "We weren't reforming children. We were preparing vessels. Parker, he believed you could carve sin out of the soul. Hollow them out and fill them with obedience. He thought cold purged impurity." When I pressed, he began to cry. I signed the inspection reports. I wrote the language. I made it sound like a Christian camp. Reverend Josiah L. Parker's sermons are archived at St. Augustine's Seminary. I found one labeled Doctrine of Extraction, dated just weeks before the 1952 fire. In it he writes, "To hollow a child is to unshackle it. Fire clears the root. Frost cauterizes the spirit. There is no death in this, only release." How many institutions like this existed under different names? Different seals? All hollow, all quietly burning behind stained glass promises? Sterling House never closed. There's no paperwork. No sale. No demolition permit. And satellite images still show its silhouette, barely visible under the frost-burnt trees. I have to go there. The drive to Sterling House felt longer than it should have. Kansas highways stretch in ways the brain can't measure, each mile stitched with static and a sense of being watched. The last turnoff was unmarked, nothing but a break in the tree line and 2 leaning fence posts eaten by moss. The building was still there. I expected ruins, but the structure stood intact, though weather-worn. Ivy tangled up the bricks like veins. The windows were clouded with dust and frost. Yet something about the place felt paused. Not abandoned, just stalled. Like it was holding its breath. Inside, the temperature dropped like I'd stepped into winter again. The floors creaked with that ancient, deliberate weight. In the foyer, I found rows of photographs. Black and white portraits, children, ages 10 to 16, each in the same starched uniform, seated in the same chair, under the same crucifix. All with the same forced smile. And no names. Only numbers etched in fading pen across the bottom corner of each print. Subject 31, Subject 32, Subject 33. In the east wing, beneath the collapsed rafters of the chapel dormitory, I found a stone wall carved with dozens of names, small, jagged, desperate. Nora, Elijah, Annabeth, Franklin. Some had hearts or crosses beside them. But nearly all were violently scratched out. As if someone tried to forget them, or feared remembering. Then I found the journals. A locked drawer in the headmaster's office, pried open with a rusted fire hook, held identical black notebooks. Dozens of them. Each labeled with a student number. Inside, entries dated weeks apart, but written in nearly identical handwriting. The same phrases repeated. Today I worked in the south field. I have been corrected and feel better now. I do not miss my mother. Missing is a selfish thing. Father says I am clean now. I am almost ready. But in the back of Subject 34's journal, written in what looked like a frantic, slanted scrawl, my name is Nora. My name is Nora. My name is Nora. If I stop writing it, I won't remember. He says that means I'm healing. But I think he's taking it from me. I found more, letters supposedly from family, all typed in the same font, with the same exact phrasing. We are proud of your journey. The Lord is using you. Forget the past and let Him fill your vessel. No signatures. Just, with love, those who sent you. Upstairs I met someone. Or someone met me. A woman sat in the hallway, legs curled under her like a child, braiding yarn into a frayed doll's head. She looked maybe 60, wearing what once might have been a staff uniform. Her name tag was scratched until it was unreadable. When I asked if she was from here, she smiled with distant politeness. We're all from somewhere before, she said. But here they teach you how to be hollow. How to stop hurting. She wouldn't give her name. When I asked again, her smile faltered. I had one, she whispered. It was pretty. But names don't last here. They melt. When I turned to leave, she asked, Do you hear the crying in the prayer room? I didn't. Not yet. So I went. The prayer room was at the back of the west wing. Heavy wooden door. Cold brass knob. It was empty. But I swear, the moment I stepped inside, I heard soft sobbing. Dozens of voices. But no one was there. Only pews warped with age. Candles burnt to nubs. And a pile of worn shoes in the corner, neatly arranged. Child-sized. Unpaired. They'd been weeping for decades. The first time I heard the grinding, I was standing near the laundry chute. It was metal on stone, somewhere deep beneath the building, slow and deliberate. Like gears shifting inside a spine. I thought it might be the wind, or pipes settling. But the floor beneath me vibrated, just for a second, as if something had awakened far below. Sterling House has no documented basement. But I found an access hatch hidden behind a supply closet lined with hymnals and broken typewriters. The floorboards beneath it were layered with tar and thick, hand-forged nails, not mechanical, but ritualistic. Someone had wanted it sealed. I broke it open. The crawl space dropped into a brick shaft barely wide enough for my shoulders. The ladder rungs were iron and ice-cold. I climbed down 20 feet into what should have been a foundation crawl, but found a hallway instead. Rough stone. No lights. Just old candle brackets and stains on the walls like melted rust. The air was wet and acidic, and it breathed. These tunnels weren't on any map. I followed them for what felt like an hour, every turn too tight, every wall too close, the ceiling too low. At one point, the passage looped on itself. I passed the same nail-scratched cross 3 times, though I hadn't turned. Then I found the sealed door. Not wood, but poured concrete. Set with embedded prayer tokens, rosaries frozen in mortar, child-sized handprints pressed into the bottom edge. Scrawled in chalk above it. The hollowing is not a place. It is a season. Some never thaw. The room beyond was only accessible because a section of wall had collapsed. I squeezed through rubble into what must have been a ritual chamber. An altar stood in the center, ringed by stone pews and melted candle mounds. Symbols, that same downward triangle with 7 crooked XS, painted over and over across the walls, in layers of soot and what I think was dried blood. Dozens of old Polaroids were nailed to the far wall. Children again. Eyes closed. Some with cloth over their mouths. All of them sitting in silence. A few had small bowls beside them, labeled Patience Void Ash. I found a binder on the floor, waterlogged and chewed by time, labeled Doctrine of Quiet, Week 9, Deprivation Notes. Silence begins the hollowing. When the body no longer hears itself, it is open to receiving. Sensory starvation accelerates disassociation. Music must not be used until day 21. Subjects begin forgetting personal identifiers by day 12. Dreams increase. Screaming is to be rewarded with cold. Then, in a margin, one line handwritten in frantic ink. They are not empty when they die, they are full of him. The air shifted again. Every candle in the room, long dead, flared to life. No spark, no match. They simply woke up. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Wet, bare feet. I turned. Nothing. But in the far corner, a mirror leaned against the wall, smeared and cracked. It whispered. I didn't imagine it. It spoke. In a child's voice, half-mouthed, stuttering through static. You're not real yet. But you're getting quieter. I ran. I left the tunnels gasping and shaking, with soot in my teeth and blood in my ears. When I returned to the foyer, the portraits were gone. In their place? Identical frames. Each filled with mirrors. And in each, my reflection was smiling back, just a little too wide. I returned to the archive room beneath the courthouse in Holcomb. It was colder than before. This time, I brought gloves, better lights, and a crowbar. I wasn't looking for ghost stories. I was looking for proof. Structure. Continuity. A system. I found it behind a false panel in the north wall, not locked, just wedged behind a cracked filing cabinet labeled Closed Facilities, Faith-Based. Inside, one water-warped metal chest, sealed with an iron clasp. Inside the chest, beneath layers of cloth and dust, a red leather folio labeled Reclamation Network, EST 1938, Sacred Hearth Cooperative, Class Omega. The first page was a ledger. Dozens of facility names. All with identical mottos beneath them. To empty is to heal. To burn is to sanctify. Each location was followed by a short notation: status, active, collapsed, submerged, number of subjects, and a final column marked only with an hourglass symbol. Kansas was just one node. There were entries from Montana, Louisiana, Vermont, and Alaska. All listed under different names: St. Hiram's Academy, The Cleansing Veil, Our Lady of the Root, Whispering Pines Institute. But they all shared the same insignia, the downward triangle surrounded by 7 crooked X's. Some names were underlined. Sterling House was among them. So was a site marked St. Drusilla's, Fort Ord, CA, a decommissioned military base. Another, The Fifth Hearth, reopened, 1971. Further in the file, I found transfer manifests. Dozens. Children moved between institutions with no parental consent, no official escort. Just stamps. Authorized OSV. One document, partially burned, had a full header. Order of the Seventh Veil, internal use only, site roster, continental program. This was national. This was structured. I scanned the back pages quickly and froze. My own grandfather's name was there, Milo J. Forrester, listed as Site Chaplain, Training Phase 1, at a facility in Illinois I'd never heard of, Coven Station. He died before I was born, supposedly a good man. A small-town pastor. But here, he was a part of it. Tucked into the final pocket of the folio was a child's drawing, faded but intact. It showed a large building, triangular-roofed, with a black sun overhead and stick figures with hollow circles for faces. At the bottom, in crayon, they said we'd be clean soon. I left Holcomb that night with nausea in my stomach and a single conclusion in my mind: this was never just about Sterling House. That was just one needle. The thread runs wide, buried beneath layers of charity, faith, and public silence. I spoke to a woman I found on an old message board, one of the last survivors of the Fifth Hearth. Her name was Lacey. Now in her 70s. She remembered the triangle. The silence lessons. The way they made her forget her brother's name, how she could still see his face but couldn't speak it. Before we hung up, she said one thing that chilled me more than anything else. It's not just that they wanted to hollow us. It's that they wanted to plant something in the space where we used to be. We were the field. The doctrine was just the plow. They moved quietly. Legally. Through parishes, trusts, child services. Through grants. They didn't hide from the government. They were the government, just wearing different faces. And now I wonder how much of this rot has spread into today. How many schools, camps, clinics still bear the mark, now digitized, polished, rebranded? And how many children are still waiting to thaw? The door to the inner chapel was never meant to open. Beneath Sterling House, past the rusted service tunnels, past the whispering mirrors, past the prayer room with its weeping silence, I found a vault. Iron-banded wood, sealed with wax and scripture. Only the chosen may witness. The wax broke like brittle skin. Inside, a theater. Wooden pews, a stone altar, and a large projection screen draped with moth-eaten cloth. Rows of small chairs, child-sized, all facing forward. At the front, an old reel-to-reel projector, half buried in dust. It started on its own. The film flickered to life, grainy, jittering black and white. No sound at first, just footage of children sitting motionless, hands folded, blindfolds over their eyes. One by one, each child was led to the altar. A masked adult, Parker, I think, or someone wearing his old cassock, touched their foreheads, murmured something inaudible, then poured a black liquid into their mouths. They didn't scream. They didn't move. Just went limp. Then the film cut. A new scene. This one in a dormitory. A girl I recognized, Nora, stood trembling in the center of the room, wrapped in a blanket. She looked into the camera and whispered, "Please! If you find this, don't show anyone. Don't tell. Just bury it. If people know, they'll keep coming. They'll keep looking. And it'll start again. Please! Please let us stay forgotten." Then the film ended in a burst of smoke and the stench of ozone. I turned and saw her. Nora stood in the aisle. Not a child. Not exactly a ghost. Something in between. She wasn't smiling. Her voice echoed not in the air, but in my chest. "Will it matter if I get out?" I couldn't answer. Because I didn't know. I'd copied everything, every file, every photograph, every name, every location. I could release it. A massive exposé. Government collusion, systemic child abuse, spiritual corruption across decades. Names of current judges, bishops, donors. Some survivors might be saved. Some perpetrators might face trial. But others, those still alive, still fragile, would be hunted again. Uprooted. Broken anew. The press would turn them into headlines. Their pain into spectacle. Some would never heal. Lacey had begged me. "Don't make us famous. Just let it rot." But how could I bury truth? The answer came not in logic, but in motion. I took the final folder, the red folio, the original registry, and placed it on the altar. I poured lamp oil over it. And I lit the candle still sitting there, somehow waiting for this. The fire caught fast. As it burned, I felt the walls exhale. The whole chapel shuddered. Not collapsing, releasing. Nora stepped forward. She didn't touch me. She just looked into the flame and said, "Thank you for not taking me with you." I left the house before sunrise. Locked the doors behind me. Left no notes. No warnings. I kept the digital copies. Hidden, encrypted. Not for fame. Not for leverage. For memory. Because the doctrine was never just an institution. It was an idea, one that survives through belief, through attention, through invitation. If I ever feel it stirring again, in another building, another policy, another quiet charity in another dying town, I'll know what to do. Until then, I'll keep a candle lit. Not for the doctrine. For the ones who almost disappeared. And the ones who chose not to. The fire report read like it always does. Structural compromise due to deferred maintenance. Possible electrical surge in sub-basement wiring. Entire building lost. No casualties reported. Site to be cleared pending historical review. Sterling House officially burned down on April 2, 2025, a freak incident during an unusually dry spring. Local news ran a short segment. The town issued a brief statement of regret. The mayor called it A piece of Brearley's complicated history. By the following week, the land had already been purchased. An LLC called Concord Renewal Group filed plans for a spiritual retreat center. No one mentioned the chapel beneath, or the altar, or the children. When investigators arrived, they found only stone foundations and rubble, no record of the sublevels. No digital logs. The vault room had collapsed in on itself. A wall of earth and silence. According to the report, the only personal item recovered was a small metal object beneath a melted beam, a child's locket. Inside, a photo of a young girl with freckles and a handwritten note. Nora, 1951. Smile bright, little lamb. No last name. No matches in any state records. The rest is gone. Every paper, every tape, every bone misplaced or rehomed to unrelated case files. A local genealogist noted the Parker family registry has inconsistencies, but when pressed, replied, "It's not uncommon in rural records from that era. Some things don't survive fire. Others hide behind it." I kept my copies, of course. But not even digital records feel safe anymore. Hard drives flicker. Cloud links break. The files rearrange themselves, names go blank, folders vanish. Sometimes when I open the archive, every photo displays the same child. The same blank smile. And sometimes it's me. What no one knows, what I never reported, is that something didn't burn. Something the fire didn't want. Weeks after the incident, I returned one last time. Not to the ruins, but to the woods behind them, to a clearing marked in one of the early ledgers as Release Site A. There, between the trees, I found a single wooden cross. Unmarked. Half buried in frost. Beneath it, a small box, wrapped in wax paper, bound in twine. Inside, a child's sketch. The same one I'd found in the archives. A triangle roof building, a black sun, hollow-faced children. But this version had been changed. Scribbled over. The building was now ash. The children were gone. And in the center, where the black sun had once hovered, a new symbol had been drawn, a triangle, pointing downward, still surrounded by 7XS, but one X had been crossed out. Someone was trying to end it. Or believed they had. But I don't think things like this end. Not when they're rooted in systems. In laws. In faith turned inward until it starves itself. Not when every page burned becomes a blank one waiting for new ink. Sometimes, late at night, I wake and swear I hear sobbing, not from a child, but from something older. Regretful. Cold. And still hungry. I wasn't supposed to find this. And maybe no one else was supposed to either. But if you're reading this, then you've heard the doctrine now. And the hollow has already found its name in you.